Do you stay up at night thinking about the housing bubble? What caused the global financial crisis anyway? And how did the U.S. subprime mortgage crisis contribute to the global financial crisis of 2008? Does all this sound too complicated? So let's just start with a love story. Meet Jack and Diane. Just two American kids growing up in the heartland. Jack and Diane got married in the late 1990s, and like many Americans, they dreamed of owning their own home. Even though neither had a fixed job or stable income, Jack and Diane heard from their friends that banks would still offer them a low-cost loan to buy a new home, with no down payment and only a small guarantee. They were excited but skeptical. This seemed too good to be true. They were surprised to discover that many of their friends had already taken out affordable mortgage loans, and they were happy with the increasing value of their properties. Real estate experts estimated a positive rising trend for residential property prices. This gave Jack and Diane the confidence to follow their dreams. They bought their first home with a 30-year mortgage loan. Jack and Diane benefited from one of approximately 3 million subprime mortgage loans for new house purchases issued between 2000 and 2006. By 2005, the number of subprime mortgage loans for house purchases had grown to more than 6 times the level it was in 2000. These loans were considered subprime because they were offered to individuals who had poor credit history and uncertainty about their ability to repay. During the same period, housing prices in the U.S. rose more than 50%, while wages stayed stagnant. Even though there were some individual increases and decreases in house prices locally, few people anticipated there would be a problem because the fluctuations balanced out at the national level. So how could this have happened? Why did people suddenly start to believe and invest in the housing market? And why did home prices balloon to such unsustainable levels? There are several reasons why even the smartest people fell into this housing trap. Consumers, investors, financial institutions, and the government each played a role. During the early 2000s, countries with large national surpluses had lots of money to invest overseas. These countries wanted to invest in safe assets, such as treasury bonds issued by the U.S. government. But during this period, the U.S. government decided to decrease interest rates to a record low of 1% in order to boost the economy. This decision increased domestic consumption and helped grow the U.S. economy, but it made U.S. Treasury bonds less attractive to foreign investors. Enter the mortgage loans. Through complex financial innovation, banks packaged mortgage contracts, including subprime mortgages, to sell to all sorts of investors eager for good returns. This created a misalignment of risks. With a lot of money from investors pouring into U.S. banks, the financial institutions needed to find more borrowers, but the pool of reliable borrowers was insufficient. So in such an unregulated environment, the banks and the government decided to make the criteria for securing loans more lenient. Many people who had unreliable income, poor credit, or no assets started borrowing money from banks to buy homes with zero down payment. Between 2000 and 2005, the percent of subprime mortgages among all mortgages increased from 5% to 20%. Meanwhile, during this time, house hunters like Jack and Diane heard from friends and the media that making an investment in real estate was a good financial decision. People who had not yet invested started to feel left out, and soon enough, more and more people jumped onto the real estate bandwagon. As more people invested in the real estate market, the value of their investments steadily increased. Homeowners became more and more excited, and they started to get a false sense of confidence that the value of their homes would continue to grow indefinitely. Unknowingly, these risky subprime mortgage holders helped to fuel the U.S. housing bubble. With so many different institutions transferring the risk of these subprime mortgages, it was hard for individuals to see the full picture of what was going on in the economy. By mid-2006, the unthinkable happened. Home prices across the U.S. began to decline simultaneously and fell by more than 10% over the next 18 months. Jack and Diane's house, once worth $100,000 at its peak, quickly dropped in value. Since the value of real estate is heavily dependent on other properties in the area, as one home decreased in value, other properties in the neighborhood also decreased in value. As house prices declined and the value of the mortgage became higher than the value of the house itself, homeowners no longer had an incentive to continue paying their mortgages. Many families were already having problems making their monthly mortgage payments. In fact, many homeowners decided to stop paying their mortgage altogether and started defaulting on their debt. As more and more families foreclosed on their loans, banks and investors started to experience extreme losses. And with that, the housing bubble burst and the financial crisis was in full swing. Although the housing crisis started in the US, its effect was far-reaching and began to impact the financial world abroad. Banks in Europe became stressed, and panic started. Globally, countries and governments used a combination of emergency lending programs, capital requirements, bailouts, and guarantees to fight the panic. Today, almost a decade after the worst part of the US recession, Jack and Diane are slowly growing their savings and building their nest egg once again. It took a while, but they managed to both find stable jobs and have reduced their everyday spending habits by only buying necessities. As a young couple with an eye for their future, Jack and Diane are eager to invest most of their savings in a high-growth stock opportunity. Technology stocks are on the rise, and media attention on tech IPOs and fast-growing public companies make investing in technology stocks seem like a good idea. Some of Jack and Diane's friends are buying tech stocks, and they want to invest their savings as well. But is this really a good idea? Did they learn their lesson from the housing bubble? Booming prices, like those experienced during the housing crisis, should raise questions for consumers, lenders, and investors. Are they seeing the whole picture and finding ways to coordinate and minimize risk? And did Jack and Diane learn their lesson from the housing bubble? How will they think about their financial future? Only time will tell.
Little ditty about Jack and Diane, two American kids growing up in the heartland.